Hey, welcome to Coastal Connection, Embrace the Power. We have Caren Lock today, and we're going to be talking about mentorship. And she is an influencer. We're going to talk about leadership. And, I'm here in the studio with my boy Mike G. And Caren, we want to say, what's up?
What's up?
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Naturally, hey, we had to get you on. You're an influencer, and you've touched so many people's lives. And so, what I want to do before we really get started is somebody give a little bit of your background, your title, and your journey to how you got to Dallas and how you became a lawyer.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Caren Lock. My title is really long, but really it's Regional Vice President and Associate General Counsel for TIAA. In essence, my job is to do, I know it's really long, Mike. I am the in-house lobbyist for a region on the state side for a company called TIAA. And my background is lawyer by training, but I eventually kind of morphed my way from being a lawyer to doing government relations work. So GR work is what I've been doing now for the last 15 years. I came to the US when I was 8 years old, and my parents had very little. They didn't even finish high school, neither one of them. But education was always something critically important, and it was table stakes. There was no question that I was going to go to college, but I just had to pay for it. So they weren't going to pay for it. I had to pay for it. So I worked 3 jobs. I worked at what was called Western Sizzlin at the time, waiting tables. I worked at McDonald's, and you'll love this. I cleaned toilets at the school campus because I got a break on the tuition if I worked there. So it was work study. And so that's kind of a little bit of my journey. And I went off to college in Kansas, came back to Baylor Law School. That was some good training at Baylor Law School. And we can talk a little bit about resilience there.
Awesome. The one thing that I wanted to ask you that I find is very important because I've known you for a while. Your son's a Marine. Your husband's a very good businessman on everything he touches, and you're just full of energy and resiliency. And I met you at the Dallas Assembly. I finally met you on a plane. Then we were at the Dallas Assembly speaking, and you're just an impactful person for your community. And one thing I actually want to talk about is the Orchard program that you work before we go any further and throw it up so the guests can kind of see what you do with the Orchard program.
Yes, well, I love talking about the Orca Giving Circle. So Orca Giving Circle was started with a small idea in Dallas. We don't have a lot of philanthropy dollars going to the Asian community. Actually, in all of the US, less than 1% of philanthropic dollars goes to the Asian community. So me and a group of women, we kept seeing each other over and over again in the Asian community during different fundraisers or even conferences. And we just decided to get together, and we were going to raise money in Dallas and grant it out in Dallas or in the Dallas-Fort Worth community. And we were started in 2015. We had a mission to maybe raise $50,000 that year. We exceeded that. We raised $75,000 the very first year, and every dollar gets pushed back out into the community. And since 2015, we have granted out $1.2 million. That's all money that was raised. Yes. They were all raised by the ladies that belong to the Orca Giving Circle, and we granted right back out. It goes to things as broad as the arts, which you don't see a lot of in the Asian community, funding going to the arts. It goes to healthcare, leadership programs. It touches a very broad spectrum, and we tried really hard to not just give to crisis organizations. We know that's needed for domestic violence or hunger, but we also try to give money to inspire a new generation of Asian leaders. So we give out to leadership programs as well. So that's something that I'm really proud of. When I look back in my life, that's one of those things where I know I've done some good.
and help your community as you shape and help your community, your journey, right? As you became a lawyer, what kind of law do you actually work? Do you actually work criminal law? Do you actually work family law? Or do you actually work corporate law? What do you do? And why did you choose the field you chose as you went forward in the law profession?
Well, that's interesting because I always like to talk, as you know, because we sat next to each other on the plane and we talked, and that's how our friendship became what it is right now. And we came to the US when I was 8. So my parents worked in a restaurant, and because you can't leave an 8-year-old by herself at the house. So I kind of went to the restaurant all the time and hung out with everyone and talked their ear off. I was a talker. And one of the ladies that worked for my mom or worked with my mom said, you know, you love talking so much, you should just be a lawyer. So, I mean, that seed was planted. That was actually my personal statement when I applied to law school was, why did I want to be in law? And one of it was because I actually genuinely felt that if we didn't have justice, and knowing that my parents were under the rule of the communists, justice was not evenly doled out. So you had justice if you were in a certain class. There was no justice if you were poor. And my parents were not wealthy, and they lived through kind of the communist rules. So that really inspired me to pursue that. But at the end of the day, I could have pursued other things, but because I like to talk and I really genuinely felt like justice is something that I wanted. So you combine those two and you go to law school. Baylor was kind enough to offer me some scholarship money. And so you can see the kind of the whole journey that we talk about is just opportunities and being given some of the right opportunities. Obviously, I had to work hard. But Baylor is a unique law school. They prepare lawyers to be trial lawyers. So when you are done with Baylor, you can go in the courtroom immediately. And there were some times that I really didn't feel like I could make it. And at the very last year of law school is a class called Practice Court. It's full year. It is the worst time of your law school experience. Everybody who goes to Baylor knows practice court. They call it PC. And I remember getting kicked out of class. And by that, I mean literally, get up, Miss Locke, get out. So I will tell you the reason why I got kicked out was actually really a good life lesson. Because Baylor's training you to be a good trial lawyer, you have to go to the courtroom and you have to be able to kind of evaluate a lot of different things. So the professor calls on me, Professor Muldrow called on me. I got up, I was taking notes. I said, sir, could you repeat the question? And that's when he said, get out. I can't even mimic what he says, is get out. You can't, essentially what he was saying is, I can't take notes and listen at the same time and develop an answer. Then how in the world was I going to be a good lawyer if I couldn't go to court, gauge the reaction of the jury, build a record, ask cogent question, make sure that the judge was really paying attention to you, and also make sure that you develop the next line of questioning, leading the jury to where you want them to be. If I can't do 2 things, how am I going to go to court and do 5 or 6 things? So he basically kicked me out of class, told me to write a paper and really think about whether or not I want to go to law school. Well, heck, this is the 3rd year of law school. This is the very last year. Now you want to ask me if I want to go to law school or if I want to be a lawyer? So needless to say, I went back in. But everybody, you learn resilience when you fail, and you learn the best lessons and the most insightful lessons when you fail. So that was a real good lesson. I talk about it all the time. I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. I got kicked out of class. Yay.
But you finished. You did it. You completed it. And look where you're at today.
I did. I finished. Thank you.
Never give up.
And I just went back to the law school to talk exactly about kind of the same conversation, resilience, leadership. And I reminded my professor that I got kicked out of class.
There you go. I had a question, Caren. What is this project, if we talk about it? This seems dynamic.
Oh, thank you. Yes, the D Magazine is a magazine in the Dallas area. One of the conversations that they had was on DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So all of it is critically important, and they were kind enough to select 5 of us to talk about our journey. So there you go. There I am talking about kind of exactly what you and I are doing right
Ta-da!
now. Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Looks nice. Looks like you guys had fun on that.
We did.
Yeah.
They interviewed us and kind of took, well, like a lot of the interviews that we do on print, they take almost an hour of conversation and they condensed it into this little spot. So I hope there was some nugget of wisdom that folks take away. But DE&I is something I feel very strongly about. Being a woman of color, you pretty much live it. Now everybody talks about it in the corporate world and all over, but you don't have to talk about it if you live it every single day. I'm just
Correct.
glad that other people now want to hear what we have to say.
You brought up the people of color, and I saw a couple videos that you did about talking about your journey, talking about being a woman of color. All right, during COVID, during all this stuff that everybody started blaming, going back and forth with all this different rhetoric, how did that impact you as being an Asian American, knowing that you started from the bottom and literally, and you raised yourself to where you are and you hard work. And how did you feel during that time of being a professional woman and you're always striving to help others, that we were going through such a weird time in our society of blaming people of something, of a virus or of COVID that has nothing to do with a race, but a situation, because we've had global pandemics for hundreds of years, different times, and I just want to know what your take is on that, Caren.
Oh, no, it was very personal for me. I think it's everybody who has gone through the pandemic understands it was a difficult time, but it was particularly difficult for Asians because if you think about when it first started and all the conversation about it being the Chinese disease or the Chinese pandemic, and some of the leadership that was really involved with forcing that conversation on a population of people essentially made my mother a target of hate crime. Because if you look back to the Asian hate crimes that happened during the pandemic, they really targeted elderly Asian women. And that's my mom. My mother lives with me. My mother is barely 5 feet on her tippy toes. She weighs maybe 100 pounds wet. So it really concerned me because I could scream out loud and I probably could fight back more. She's almost 80 years old. She was 78 when the pandemic started happening. And I was so worried. I was so worried about her. I convinced her that only go to the Asian market because I felt like there was, power in numbers, and definitely do not go out by yourself later at night when it gets dark, because I was worried for her safety. So I think about, she sacrificed her entire life, moved from Hong Kong to come over here so that I could have a better life. And this is what she's rewarded with. Even though her daughter is successful and has gone to college and went off to law school, I was still powerless to protect her from the ignorance of what some folks were trying to blame. And so it was very hurtful because we are the country of opportunity, but yet sometimes that opportunity turns into opportunity of ignorance, and there's nothing I could do about it. So we made sure that we traveled with her. We made sure that she went to church with other ladies so that there were power in numbers, so that she didn't become a statistic, or that she didn't become something on CNN that you had to watch, in shock.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, is because I literally was having that conversation with my mother, and we kind of did a reflection on the late '60s, early '70s, when she was, going through different times and phases in the South. As we look at America, and definitely you, I heard one of your speeches, and you were discussing that you're not the part of the journey, but being an Asian woman trying to make a difference, being a woman of color, trying to make a difference in a profession, and that you were very motivational in that speech of telling people that, you got to keep striving, you got to keep pushing forward, and you can never give up. I want to try to figure out what fuels you. What is the thing that makes you so unique that you are always happy, you're full of energy, and that you just always want the best version of the people around you?
Well, so I will say this, Vince, I learned from people around me. My favorite phrase is water seeks its own level. There is a reason why you and I are friends. You couldn't get rid of me if you tried. You just couldn't, because you inspire me. If you surround yourself with people that inspired you, you'll want to do better. So I feel that first and foremost. But it's a moral imperative. I feel it's a moral imperative for you and for me to reach back and pull up. We did not get here alone. We stepped on the shoulders of others, and people gave us an extra hand and pulled us forward. So it is a moral obligation for me to reach back and pull up. So that's what I feel, and that's what I try to do on any given day. The conversation I just had at Baylor Law School, I gave my phone number and I gave my email to all the students that was in the room. And I said, I really mean it when I tell you should call me. I'm waiting for some of them to call me back or email me, because if I have it in me to reach back and pull up and just help one or two people, those one or two people will then go back and remember and pull someone else back. So it's paying it forward. And that's, somebody did it for me. Multiple people did it for me, and not just women. So it's important for me to always remind people that you need friends across the broad spectrum. So men have helped me, women have helped me, and women and men of different color and ethnicity have helped. So I'm just grateful that I'm in a place where I can actually be able to give back. And if you never, ever forget that.
You keep changing. You've evolved since you got to came to America. You've evolved so much. And the one thing that I've learned in my own journeys is that you surround yourself with good people, good things do happen. And Mike, my co-host, he's good people. He makes things happen because so much stuff behind the scene. What is your balance? What balances you out in your life, and what's around you that just balances you out to make you the best version of yourself every day?
I try to have grace. I always talk about this. Women, we expect so much of ourselves. If we are not the perfect mother, and we're not the perfect wife, and we're not the perfect PTA, whatever it is, the whole world is a failure. I mean, we can take one little bad thing and we can immediately turn ourselves into the worst of anything. So I try to remember to have grace for myself. And when something goes wrong, I try to go, all right, well, that happens. Okay, move on. It's so hard though. So what I do is I surround myself with good girlfriends. I have a group of people who are just, they will tell me when I have spinach between my teeth. They will tell me when they find a good article about me, they'll send it to me. So they will lift me up when I have a bad day. They will send me cookies just to remind me, hey, there is goodness in this world. So that's important. I also practice a lot of self-care. I know now when to say no. It's hard because at the very beginning, anybody who asks you to do something, you say yes. Now I try really hard to focus on things that make me glow. And by that, I mean, there's something in everybody that they're passionate about, and it makes you glow. And what makes me glow is to help women and girls. And it's not that I don't care about cancer research. And it's not that I don't care about puppies. And it's not that I don't appreciate the arts. Those are all things other people that makes them glow. Helping women and girls make me glow. So if it's about women and girls, I will find time. And that is in some ways something that gives me joy, and I practice it, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something good in the world. And I also do yoga. So
I got a question, Caren. What would you tell leaders how to be leaders, equal to their employees and stuff like that? Because you're high on the level. Some people lose themselves. How would you say as a leader put yourself eye to eye with the employee? How to be a better leader for other people's directors, managers, VPs, stuff like that.
I think it's important for leaders to be self-aware. That's the first and foremost. And by being self-aware, you have to understand that you did not get here on your own. Somebody made way for you. Somebody helped you along the way. So being kind will go a long, long way. My very first job out of law school, I went to an interview. The receptionist was sitting there and we just chit-chatted. Turns out she wasn't the receptionist. She was the senior partner's assistant, but she was just helping out. I did not know that at the time. And I remember her name was Shelly. I don't remember Shelly's last name. And on the way out, I told Shelly I really appreciated her hospitality, and I appreciated that she, took time to talk to me. Turns out I did get the job. Later on, I found out that she told the partner that I was the only one of the prospective lawyers, because I had just graduated, but I hadn't passed the bar. I was the only prospective lawyer who even gave her the time of day. So I like to think that maybe that had something to do with it, because if you are kind to people, people will want to do things for you. If you are a jerk, nobody wants to be around you, the first and foremost. You're lucky they don't try to sabotage you if you're a jerk. So I think that goes a long way. And I think that's the same way for any good leader, is being self-aware, knowing what you're good at and knowing what you're not good at. I think that's important. And that's a lifelong journey, because what I was really good at when I was a younger lawyer isn't what I'm good at now. I feel like I've mastered that, but now I'm working on other things. So my other thing now is to make sure that I surround myself with more people like you, Mike, and more people like the general bugs. So.
Naturally. I think I need to surround myself with more people like you, because I've watched you in action, and I watch you work a room when we were in the Dallas Assembly, and you do work a room very well, and understanding networking and how people's position impact of getting something moved. Caren, I'm going to tell you, and I'm just going to throw this out, what I admire about you is that you understand the dynamics of how to move things in an area, and who are the power brokers, and how you're supposed to talk to those people, and that's an art. That is, everybody doesn't have that skill set that you've inherited over the years. So maybe working in the restaurant with your parents,
Yes.
gave you that unfair advantage of people watching, people dialogue, and it's paid off for you. So as we get closer to the end of the show, one thing that I'd love to hear from you is what is your footprint in the sand that you want to leave? What is the legacy that you want to leave for the next generation? So there's a lot of young women out there, or young boys that, say, you know what, Caren Lock had it together. I want to be like her.
I want young girls of color know that they are not alone. It's very hard sometimes, because you look, and even now, as far as we have come, there is still so much inequity out there. I want little girls of color to understand that they're not alone in this world. There are lots of people out there that want to help them. What you have to remember is to always ask. We get so worried about what people think about us, or they get focused on this aspect of the way they look, or whether or not they fit in. There are so many people out there like me and you and Mike who are willing to help. You just need to ask. If you ask and somebody says no, okay, fine, all right, no harm, no foul. But you know what? Somebody will say yes. I guarantee it. I guarantee somebody will say yes, because when you help somebody, it makes you feel good. I mean, all the endorphins kick in, everybody feels good. So we want to help. I just want young women of color to remember that it is not linear. You don't have to just ask the woman that looks just like you, because one of my mentees, somebody that I'm helping with in the company, is a young African-American woman. So it's not that you have to only go to somebody that looks just like you. Remember to find mentorship and remember to find leaders, and you will be that. Just give yourself a little bit of grace.
Very nice. That's very informative. Very informative. And
Thank you so much, Mike. And General, you are so inspiring. Mike, I hope that I have more opportunities to talk to
thank
you.
you. Thank you. You as well. Thank you. I've learned so much right now. So much. And we can keep it going and going and going, because that's how we keep it rolling.
That's right.
I'm just me, Caren. I'm just me.
See, there you go again. That's why I know you're a leader, because you're just talking about everyone else and not yourself.
Try not to. I'm not that important. Trust me. I'm not. Two important people here. You and Vince. Man,
Yes.
I'm just Mike G. See? Mike G.
I'm Mike G. I like that. I need to have a name like that. I need to have a cool sounding name.
C-Lock. Hey. C-Lock.
Awesome.
Hey, so as we wrap up, and one thing else, and I've said it like 100 times. One thing, it's like I tell my students all the time in my class, there's certain words you can't say over and over, and they always say nice. And I say, we can't use that word anymore, so I'm gonna have to ban myself today. Caren, you are such an influential person, and I don't ever want you to stop what you're doing, and don't ever stop talking to people on the plane. And don't ever stop being the best version of yourself. And, it has been a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure. And definitely I'm going to see you come to Dallas Assembly. I definitely going to come down to Texas and see you, and get after it again and work. But, hey, anybody out there that's looking for an awesome board member to make a difference on their board, talk about diversity or just talk about leadership, Caren Lock is the person. She is a rock star. So if you're looking for a hot, cool, energetic, get after it board member, it's Caren. And I don't mean hot in the other wrong terms, in the right terms. If she gets after, she'll burn your fingers off. All right. So
thank you so much, Vince. I would love more opportunities to talk to folks about this. And just, Mike, thank you so much for being a great co-host and making sure that the conversation's going. And I love what all you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caren. We appreciate you. And as we always say here at Coastal Connection, keep it rolling. All right.
Take care.